Hi guys, it's Michelle Scape with Better Living for Texans here in Montgomery County, and today we're going to start off a series of Wednesday morning talks that are going to focus on what's bugging our garden. As you can see, I've got my What's Bugging You shirt on today, which is the official shirt of the Montgomery County Master Gardeners Entomology Group. And we don't just deal with bugs though, we deal with fungal and bacterial problems as well. So let's take a look at some things that are happening in our squash plants around the community this particular week. We've had a lot of phone calls come in, a lot of pictures, and I've saved the pictures here so you can see what has come into my office this past week. So here we have a squash plant. And squash plants include summer squash, winter squash, cucumbers, pumpkins, the whole squash family. So those leafy annuals that produce the squash for us that are either trailing vines or bushy shrubs, either way, the squash family plants. This is a picture that came in this week. And as you can see, we've got some very yellow spotting happen here. We've got that spot spreading in this area. What we've got is powdery mildew. Now, powdery mildew is a fungus that thrives in moist, cramped conditions. So it's characterized by these leafy, these spots on the leaves. You will also potentially notice what looks like powdery mold, or it kind of looks like someone dumped baby powder on your plants. That is the progression. It will eventually start wilting and dying back. So what are we going to do if we have this in our garden? Well, first and foremost, check for crowding. Is this plant crowded up against other plants? Do we need to trim some of the leaves on there to give it a little more airflow in the squash bed? We also want to be careful to water the soil, not on top of the leaves, because anytime there's extra water, we're going to encourage this fungal growth. Another thing, the sad thing, when it's pouring rain, I know around our area we've had some really rainy days followed by really hot days. That's gonna, unfortunately, result in some fungus in our garden. We can apply fungicides. They can be purchased at our local garden centers. There are multiple brands and varieties. No one is better than the other. If you're going the more natural route, often we're going to look at neem oil or a mild milk solution. But if we're purchasing something, then we just want to purchase a general fungicide and be careful to follow the directions on it for the intensity, the dilution if necessary, and of course the frequency of application. Does this mean that this plant is dead? Not necessarily, but we do want to keep an eye on it. We do want to be aggressive in our treatment and try to keep it from spreading to the other plants in the garden, because this will spread from one to another. Fungal spores are airborne. They're also carried on the feet of pests. So some things to think about. All right, so the next picture I have, let me pull this up here. Ooh, this one was a doozy. This is a really, really rough picture to see. If you see what I have here, this is called crown rot or root rot. And it kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? This plant is really in bad shape. Unfortunately, this happens also from a fungus. A fungus causes this. It's an airborne fungus that travels in the breeze. It travels on the feet of our pests. It's gonna result, what you're gonna do is walk out and all of a sudden you're gonna see wilted, potentially yellowing leaves. Then all of a sudden you're gonna look down. So the leaves themselves may not be discolored, but they're going to be wilted. But when you get down and start looking at the actual plant, you're going to see yellowing as you get to the crown, and unfortunately the rot that is there. This plant is unfortunately lost. If you have a situation like this where you've got crown or root rot, we need to take the plant out. We need to cover this soil and let it solarize. We should not put anything here for a little bit and give that organism, that fungus, time to die back. The only solution that we have here is removal, and then of course consider planting another squash plant that will do better in a different place if you're really wanting squash at the time. Again, high moisture problems are going to do this. All right, let's see if I can get to the next picture here. And the next picture is our unhappy friend. Some of you are going to be really familiar with this. You've seen him and you know what I'm talking about. This, oh my goodness, look at the stem right here. So this is the stem of the squash plant. These are the vines where the leaves will come out, and we've got a hole. We've got some brown gooey gunk going on in here. If we took this and cut into that stem, we would probably find our friend the squash bug. So the squash bug lives in the soil. They are a little bug with gray leaves and an orange body. They lay their eggs on the stems of the plant. So if you were out there looking and you saw these little copper flecks along the stem of your plant, especially close to the crown, those are squash bug eggs, and we'd want to get those off of there as much as possible. To prevent squash bug issues, we often really encourage us to move debris. That means pull leaves, pull mulch away from the crown of the plant, and try to prevent anything that would house them, because these bugs, unfortunately, they vine bore down in there. They're going to cause this particular stem will be wilted and suddenly wilted and yellow, and then the whole stem dies back. So what can we do? When we have this vine boring squash bug, we want to cut this off as close to the base as we can on the, we want to get this whole stem off of there and get rid of it. Burn it, throw it in the trash, get rid of it. We can also then kind of bury that stem and hope that the plant can recover. Squash bugs are one of those things, these vine boring bugs, when they get in there, they really do some damage, unfortunately. Once you get squash bugs, they are rather tenacious, so you'll find that they often come in, and when they're there, you have multiples. So if you did look down and find those eggs, you'd see 20 to 30 eggs on those stems kind of as you get close to the base of the plant. Once they hatch, they burrow in and really take up residence there. They're difficult to maintain. There's, different things. Of course, applying an insecticide to the base of the plant and those low base stems, trying to kill the little larvae as they hatch is our best effort, removing the eggs if we find them. And then of course, be diligent in, if you start to see that leaf dying back, go ahead and cut that stem off and get rid of the bug before it just continues to burrow into the rest of the plant. All right, now let me see if I can move us to another spot. You may have walked out at some point and discovered, oh my goodness, I've got brown leaves and I've got spots on the squash. What in the world happened here? Well, that is just a squash bug, not the vine boring squash bug, but the regular squash bug. And that damage is gonna look like this. So we've got, the leaves are yellowy, they're starting to get brown and crunchy. We've got some wilting going on here. Oftentimes this little squash bug, or leaf-footed bug, they're sometimes called, he's gonna be also down there on the fruit, and you might see these little circular spots on your squash, and that means that he's getting down there and he's eating some nutrients out of that squash. It's still safe to eat it. However, it's going to make that go bad faster. Unfortunately, they're going to spoil faster, so you need to use them quickly. Squash bugs are something that are really hard to combat, so we really aim on handling them when they're in their nymph or their little teenage phase. So the nymph of the squash bug is a gray beetle looking thing that you're gonna find down by the soil or close to the crown of the plant. Squish them, kill them, spray them with insecticide, remove debris from that crown as best you can, because that's their hiding space. When you find them in their kind of teenage phase, they're orange bodied with black legs, and they'll be in clusters. You'll find like 15 of them. They love squash, but they also love tomatoes. Again, in that gray nymph phase or in that orange black-legged phase, we can apply insecticides. That's our best time to get them, because once they become adult squash bugs, they're quick. They fly quickly from plant to plant. They travel very rapidly throughout the day, and they're a lot harder to catch, trap, and kill, because you pretty much have to get the insecticide directly on the body in order to deal with them. So again, once you start seeing the little gray-bodied babies or you see the orange-bodied nymphs, go ahead, use your insecticide of choice, and apply diligently with the instructions listed on that insecticide. So those are our primary problems this week in the garden. These last few weeks, we've had a lot of people with a lot of squash problems. And I know that squash are something that, are primary, they're prized, they're things that we love in our garden. So I always encourage you to have some backup plants ready to go. You may have some squash that are producing now, but those squash are going to be at a point where they're susceptible to, the problems that we've seen here. It's also the time of year that we go ahead and start planting another round of those plants, maybe in a different bed or a different row or in a secondary container, and stay on top of it. Stay looking, stay diligent, and as always, feel free to contact us here at the County Extension Office. You can talk to myself, you could talk to a Master Gardener volunteer if they're in the office at this time, or you could talk to our horticulture agent. We're all here to help you out. And of course, right here on this group, feel free to pop things in the comments, shoot me a message, or give me a phone call. I'm here to help. So that's what's bugging us in the garden this week. Talk to you next week.